Just to clarify, I won't give any names for obvious reasons, although I do sincerely hope that there will be a braver person to unveil the awful happenings that take place when the curtain closes. Also, please excuse any typos or mistakes, but I am writing this in precarious conditions and in a rush. For context, I was one of the main characters on a top-rated horror TV show that has been going on for over a decade. Considering the genre, it was not uncommon that a lot of actors died. It's a perk, to be honest, because if you want to change jobs, you can just notify the writers and producers, and they will kill you off, and then they throw you a last supper, and off you go. Although, come to think of it, I don't recall seeing any of the actors in any other roles since, but more on that later. Now, I didn't ask to be killed off. I liked having a cushy job and a steady income. This was my comfort bubble. So, when I got the script, I was disappointed to say the least. I don't have the papers anymore, but this is the summary. My character, let's call him Alex, is a paranormal investigator. He appears on the show a lot. At first, he starts off as a wannabe joke, runs into a couple of real-deal ghosts, and becomes a kick-ass ghost hunter. He has a few ghost hunter friends. He is not really the main character, but he does appear in most episodes, at least since season 2. Now, the story arc of the whole show has been a little slow lately, so they needed a big boom type of event to set up the next season. They decided to kill a bunch of us off, and have a couple of us return as ghosts. Decisions were all based on rating. The most loved and most hated of those who would die are to come back. Alex and 2 others were smack in the middle, so they just die, and our journey is over. When we received the script, we were also invited for the famous Last Supper with the producers, writers, first assistants, and some of the TV staff. Naturally, the 2 returning characters were not to partake. It's kind of a rite of passage, and a very well-regarded event. The invitation you receive for this dinner party I mean, I am sure the White House does not send such formal and beautiful invites. It's stunning. It comes with a huge gift basket, which includes suits or dresses, depending on your gender and preferences, perfumes, makeup, shoes. My basket contained a beautiful all-black Brioni suit with a black shirt and tie to match. The shoes, albeit looking very expensive, were not my cup of tea, but hell, free and expensive. I can put them on for one evening, I thought. There were other little tidbits, like golden-plated and probably ridiculously expensive mints, Lumber face cream. Hell, I think the whole basket cost north of $20K, and I was sure the dinner would be much more than that. We were going to be picked up by a personal limo and taken to the producer's personal mansion, where 7 gourmet courses were awaiting us. Don't get me wrong, I am a well-paid actor, and I haven't shied away from living a comfortable, sometimes extravagant lifestyle, but this was exceptional, even for me, so I was quite excited. It made the whole dying on the show bit bearable, which is why, 2 days before they were to shoot my death scene, and therefore mark my last day on set, when I was approached by a random assistant who told me not to go to the dinner, I laughed it off. He was jealous, probably not invited to dine with the creme de la creme, and therefore wanted to solve my game. No siree, I thought. Then again, on wrap-up day, he came to me and said, "Sir, I cannot emphasize this enough. Do not go to that dinner." "Hey pal, what's your problem?" I asked. Normally I would have not engaged, but I was quite emotional that day. It was the end of a chapter, a decade spent with the same people, doing the same thing. I was on edge. "Did you keep in touch with the others, the ones who died?" he asked. "What? Nobody has ever heard from them, sir. Some of them not in 10 years. I winced. I'd never thought of it until now. I wasn't close to anyone on set. I never really realized it. But work was work and play was play, and we were never really encouraged to mix the two. Those who were really close on set were still going strong, the ones who died so far. Well, not to say that nobody cared about them, it's just like when that colleague leaves your company and you write nice goodbye cards saying let's keep in touch, but you never do. You're crazy, dude. I replied, "I should go report you." "No," he reacted, looking genuinely scared. "Call someone." He started yelling, "Someone who died, call anyone." "Okay, do relax," I replied, trying to calm him down. He was shaking uncontrollably at this point, on the verge of tears. "Call someone, sir. If anyone picks up, then go to that dinner." But if you can't find anyone from the 40-something actors who died in the past seasons, then please just skip it, he said, managing to keep his cool. Alright, time to wrap up the last scene. I could hear them call out to me, startling me. I looked at the assistant one more time, feeling uneasy. When he noticed the producers looking our way, he made himself scarce. He was queasy, jumpy, had a yes master type of vibe to him. I almost decided he was a lunatic, but I couldn't quite shake off the feeling of genuine distress that he conveyed to me during our short conversation. A problem for later, I thought. For now, time to work. The 5 of us each had unique deaths throughout the episode. 2 of them died in traps set by some maniacal ghosts who didn't want to be hunted. A ghost killed me and my on-screen wife as we were trying to exorcise another one. As for the last one, he died because they thought they were in the clear when they weren't really. Your standard horror plot, where you think 2 live to tell the story, but you end up having only one final girl. That was the main character. She survived. Her boyfriend would come back to haunt her, and my wife would protect her. But that was for next season. As for us, skewer, tagliata, and piano pancake, this was the end. We didn't need many takes. They used so much CGI and AI these days that your acting doesn't have to be top-notch anymore. Then we received flowers and signed cards that read, "It was a pleasure working with you. Keep it real. Let's keep in touch," etc. And then we parted ways. That night I went out for drinks and dinner with my best friend and her wife, a bittersweet event to celebrate the end of an era. This was Wednesday. I told them about the lunatic on set. What did he say happens to these people? Mary asked me as I finished telling the story. That's the thing, he didn't say anything specific, just to not go, and implied that they disappeared. So, call them, she proposed. Hey, this is the dude who plays Alex. We worked together 5 years ago. Just wanted to make sure you weren't eaten by your old employer. Great to hear you're doing okay, I said mockingly. It's just weird, you know, I added, switching to my normal tone. Use my phone. That way they won't recognize the number, she offered. Yeah, but then they won't pick up maybe, I argued. Out of like 40 people, at least one is bound to pick up. Look, I began, not sure where I was going with it. Fine. Okay, let's get the bill, grab a bottle of wine, relocate to my place, and prank call some actors in the middle of the night. We all laughed as my statement seemed to lighten the mood, and I signaled for the check. After having paid, we stopped by a gas station and bought the most expensive wine they had. We then Ubered to my place and sat at the newly renovated kitchen island. Season 12 money, I thought to myself. Alright, here, let's try the first number, I said as I pulled out my phone and copied the number into Mary's. As soon as I dialed and tapped the green button to call, a robotic female voice informed me that the number was no longer in service. Odd, but a mere coincidence, I thought. By the 5th occurrence, it was beginning to feel less of a coincidence and more of a problem, so I dare say I was relieved when the 6th picked up. Hello, a half-asleep voice said. Mark, I asked. No. Who is calling? I'm calling for Mark, please, I repeated, not giving my name. Wrong number, the person said and hung up. Strange, I thought, but called back. Hello. He picked up again, this time audibly annoyed. Hi, really sorry to bother you at this hour, but it is imperative that I speak to Mark, I said firmly. Look, buddy, there is no Mark here. You must have the wrong number. Wait, I bellowed, making sure he doesn't have time to hang up. Just a second, I don't have the wrong number, I am sure of it. This used to be Mark's number. I gave him Mark's full real name and identified myself at this point, but for obvious reasons, I won't repeat it here. For real? The guy on the other end said, surprised. That's wild, man. I'm a huge fan, but I'm sorry, I've never met Mark. This number, it's somewhat new. I moved out west 6 months ago, changed my number and everything. He explained. Sorry to bother you so late, man, I said and hung up. My stomach was beginning to feel hollow. Something was off. Mary and Jen could tell as well. We continued calling the other 40 or so numbers, but they were all mostly disconnected. Only on one other occasion someone picked up and stated we had the wrong number again. So, what now? Mary asked. As I finished the list of 40+ people, find the guy who told you about this and ask for further clarification. Jen volunteered. What if you get him in trouble though? Mary asked. I don't know. I guess I just don't go. If something's happening to these people, though, shouldn't you find out? What do you propose then? How about you don't go to dinner, but you go to the house? Jen suggested. What do you mean? I don't even know where it is. There's no address. A limo is supposed to pick me up. So you follow the limo, and then you expect there is no security. In a place like this, Jen soaped. It was complicated. We were curious, but it did feel dangerous. I also recalled the genuinely terrifying look and feel of that assistant from earlier. We use a drone, Mary suggested after a long silence. She worked in filming and had amassed a sizable collection of really high-tech drones. Plus, she was proficient in flying them. It was a good idea. Also, I don't think you should be home when they come. I have a feeling it might not be safe. Jen added. Jen's right. Plus, my best drone has about an 8-mile transmitting range. Depending on where the location is, we might need to drive. So, we had a plan. On Friday, the day of the dinner, I would be relocating to their place, where we would be waiting in their car. When the limo would come to pick me up, we were to follow it with the drone. Jen would be on standby to drive if we needed to follow the drone ourselves to make sure we kept it in transmitting range. We debated whether I should be wearing my Brioni suit and just show up at the party if it looked safe, but we agreed there were several issues with my plan, such as, what if a suit had a GPS in it? And if nothing was wrong at the location, how would I have known how to get there? The GPS idea came from Jen and got us all worried, so we agreed to take nothing from the basket. Furthermore, I was to even leave my phone at the apartment and buy a brand new set of clothes, just to be on the safe side. If all went well, I'd go back home, change, and call the producer or someone from the party, making up an excuse for why I wasn't home when the limo came to pick me up and volunteering to go myself. That way, if it was all in order, I'd keep the dinner plan. On Thursday, I contemplated going back on set and talking to that assistant. In fact, I got as close as the entrance of the building when I changed my mind and went home. Then I changed my mind again and went back to the set. Suffice to say, I was a mess. Finally, I decided to wait for him to come out and tackle him then. That never happened. Maybe it was his day off. Or maybe I missed him as I was driving back and forth, being indecisive. By this point, my stomach was aching and I could barely hold food down. I wasn't worried much about missing the party, but I had already made all sorts of scenarios in my head, and in most of them, I was ending up dead. I contemplated calling the other two to check if they had been warned, but I was worried maybe they'd be in on it. I was so paranoid, I could barely shut an eye that night. Mary, Jen, and I agreed not to be talking about this on the phone or with the phones around us, and Mary went as far as buying a couple of burners for the stakeout. On Friday morning, Mary came to pick me up with a set of brand new clothes. I got dressed, and we left. If there was any GPS on me, it would indicate that I'd still be at home. We ordered in and watched a couple of movies to pass the time. At times we laughed at how ridiculous this would feel if there was nothing happening at that dinner, but I could tell that none of us genuinely believed everything was alright. Come 7:30, the agreed time for the limo picked up. We had the drone in place and waiting. We got lucky twice. First, that the driver then drove back to the house instead of the limo rental company or whatever, and second, that the drone stayed in range the whole time. The location was beautiful, remote, yet close to town. The house looked more like the Disney castle than a house, with amazing decorations. The limos of the people who actually decided to go to dinner were awaited with trays of champagne and amuse-bouches, and everything looked superb. I was starting to feel both stupid and jealous. I think I should go back home and call them, I said to the girls, feeling impatient. Wait a little bit more, Mary said. Nothing seemed out of place. I mean, no, that's not correct. Everything seemed out of place. It was like a fairy tale come to life, and I was missing out. Animators, chocolate fountains, lavish poolside decorations, and this was just the outside. We were all in awe. Not even in my wildest dreams would I throw something like this. No, honestly, look at that. I'm just going to go, I said again. Give me a second, Mary said one more time. Let me just look around a little. Get an all clear from all angles. Okay, fine. But if there is nothing in half an hour, I'm going. We are stupid, and there is no way in hell I'm missing all of this. She nodded and flew the drone across the entire palace. There was nothing out of place. things just got more and more extravagant. As we looked closer, Mary found an area that was not full of people or supervised and could fly the drone low enough to peer through some windows. The inside was breathtaking. "Hang on," she said. "What's that?" She pointed at the screen, zooming in. Now, unlike in movies, zooming in does not make the image crystal clear with every pinch. The whole thing was quite blurry, but it looked like a floating piano in the great room located at the back of the house. Do they play floating instruments, like at that restaurant in Singapore? It's in Jakarta, and it's not floating instruments. The whole place is floating, Mary corrected herself as she looked around with the drone. And they can't play this piano. There is no way to sit at it. It's just floating. I think it's just a weird decoration, I offered as an explanation. Mary shook her head and continued looking around with the drone. I couldn't really tell what she was looking for, but she did not look happy or relieved. "Interesting," she said. "What?" I asked hastily. "It's just, look at this grand room, how it's set up, with seats, like a viewing area, see? But then the piano is hanging, kind of out of sight from the seating area. I mean, you said it yourself. The whole thing is a fairy tale, and then you have this room. It's dark and twisty, and it has a floating piano and seats," she explained. "If I could just go in and get a closer look, maybe hear something about it," she continued as she was navigating the drone around the windows. The thing is, the drone was big, it wasn't undetectable, and it wasn't all that quiet. The only reason we could get it to go that low was because the back area of the house was not yet populated. But inside the place, it was very risky. We would be caught, and maybe it wouldn't be traced back to us. But what if it was? All our careers would be over, and if, which at this point it seemed more far-fetched than ever, but if we were right about something unholy going on here, it would be even worse. Mary, although I was sure, aware of the above-listed issues, seemed set on going in. "This is a bad idea, Mary," I said. "Look, if I am wrong about this, I will take the fall for you, okay?" Best friend went crazy with jealousy and crashed the party. If anything, it will increase everybody's ratings. And worst case for me, I'll spend the night in jail. But dude, if I am right, and I have a really strong gut feeling that I am right, I might be saving your life. I nodded. I didn't like it, but hell, I also did not like the fact that I could not get in touch with one of the 40 or so people I called, or that I couldn't find that assistant again. Mary found an open door and flew the drone inside. From there we could hear some voices from the party, but nothing discernible. "What in God's name is this?" Mary asked us, pointing at something on the screen. At first, I couldn't quite figure out what she was pointing out, but upon closer inspection, my heart stopped. Before I could even form words, or thoughts for that matter, I needed to get out of the car and get some fresh air. I jerked open the car door, bolted outside, and threw up my entire lunch, some of it still undigested. "What's wrong with you?" Mary asked me as she followed me out of the car, gently placing the tablet on the back seat. "I know what they are doing there," I replied. I grabbed the tablet and pinched at the screen until the object of my panic became clear. A saw was hooked on the ceiling. Mary piloted the drone around it and around its strings, which exposed that once cut would leave the saw falling in a swinging motion. Elsewhere in the room, from the floor, a stake was barely peeking, much like in the script. They were planning to reenact the script, only this time there would be no CGI. When I explained the script and my thoughts to Mary and Jen, they looked at me in disbelief. "You don't think they planned to kill you, just like you died in the show?" Jen asked incredulously. "In normal circumstances, I'd give this whole setup the benefit of the doubt, but if you put all that we found out in the past 2 days," I trailed off. Mary, who was still flying the drone and was entirely focused on the tablet, froze in place. "Look at this," she said, turning the tablet completely towards me and Jen, who in the meantime also got out of the car and was now sitting behind me. Neither of us expected what was on the screen. Mary had flown the drone into the adjacent room, somewhat of an old school office, where on the big oak desk lay 2 scripts, Snuff 41, Part 1, The Assistant Who Blabbed, and Snuff 41, Part 2, Alex, Jane, and Eric. On the big brown leather chair overlooking the desk, a person. The person was none other than the assistant who had tried to warn me 2 days prior. His throat slit and his mouth sewn together. Suddenly, none of us had any more questions or doubts. This was real, and it was bad. "We have to report this right now," Mary said, and we all agreed. "I'll call 911, she said, looking for the burner phone in her purse. 911, what is your emergency?" A monotonous voice resonated for all of us to hear. "Mary, put the phone down. You might want to see this first," Jen said. She was still watching the screen. The drone was now no longer being flown around by Mary, but being directed by someone. A faint voice could be heard. "Quick, put the volume up," I demanded. Well, if it isn't our guest of honor. We figured you'd show up eventually. And don't you worry, soon you will have your moment in the spotlight, like all your kind craves, actors. Am I right?" The person on the other side of the drone said, laughing. Just as I was about to reply, "What? I don't know." Someone else took the drone. It was our producer. "Oh, I see you've met the chief of police already." "That's right. You've heard me, the chief of police. We're also here with the chief of staff for the Navy and the head of national security. So if you were thinking of calling the police, well, that'd be redundant, wouldn't it now?" he said, also laughing. "Now, let's begin. Set him down. Let him know what's waiting for him once we get him." I won't put down what followed next, because the level of gruesomeness can't really be put into words. Suffice it to say that they gathered around to watch a snuff film where the actors were being murdered in the same way they had died on the TV show. I wanted to stop watching. Mary was screaming next to me to stop, but it was like watching a car crash. You know what you're doing is wrong, but you just can't look away. And so I looked as they killed off the first guy, and then the girl, and I looked as the setup was ready for me, thinking that without the assistant, I would be there also. The guilt was overwhelming as I realized he gave his life up for mine. Tears were running down my face as I was taking the horrors in, as I was looking at the laptop, seeing the biggest and baddest boys in the industry partying like they'd been to the premiere of their lifetime. Only it wasn't. They were doing this regularly. "Hey," Mary shook me. "Snap out of it. You need to run. We all need to run, I think." Jen interfered. "We need to run, get out of the country, change our names, and pray to God nobody recognizes him," she said, pointing at me. "Now, we split up. You'll be safe one state over, but me, I think I'll hand myself in. It's over for me anyway," I said, still crying. "Heck no, snap out of it." Mary shook me again. "I know a guy. He'll get you paperwork. You run. Go to South America. It'll be easy." And that's what we did, and here I am at Sunday, and I am telling you my story. I am in a godforsaken place somewhere I won't name, for obvious reasons. I don't know what to do. I don't know who to call, so I'm reaching out to Reddit in the hopes that someone has some sort of power or investigative drive to get to the bottom of it. I have nothing to offer. I've lost everything but my life, and I would have given that up gladly if I knew that would put an end to this, but it won't. Those bastards, they're going to keep doing this unless someone stops them. Update. Thank you all for your support and words of encouragement. I have been moving locations a lot, and I don't always have access to the internet. It's hard to check and reply to you all, but I will try to answer some of the messages and questions. I don't have access to my funds, and most of my money is safely in banks, so plastic surgery is not an option, at least not at this time. I do like the idea of growing a beard and becoming a mountain man. I have to move every 2 to 3 days to stay ahead of them. I don't know if this will ever change, but I will keep you updated. Yes, you can have the gift basket if you dare. I have no idea whether the drone recorded anything or not, and I have no way to contact Mary at the moment, or rather, I don't want to put her in danger. All I have is some petty cash, the clothes on my back, and this burner phone. Sometimes I find a friendly local to let me sleep over and give me some food. I avoid using their internet as I fear for their lives. I wouldn't be surprised if the FBI is in on this. I can't name the show, but some of you weren't far off. Luckily, I have received a private message offering investigative help. Of course, I am wary of meeting them, but so far, they are handling it remotely. Maybe they will be able to help, and quickly, before the next death on the TV show.